So we got a new article out, David Moore. What's the plan to replace Zach Martin? Stephen Jones reveals Cowboys' initial roadmap. Okay, big takeaway from this one. When it comes to Martin, it did seem like Stephen Jones said they feel confident about Beebe. They feel confident about Hoffman maybe holding that down. Didn't shy away from still taking a lineman high in the draft. They do that a lot. But the big one was Terrence Steele. Quote, obviously we got Terrence Steele signed. I think he's going to play much better in this system with Clayton Adams. Clayton has watched all of the tape on him and just really loves him. Terrence's strong point is run blocking. If we do what I think Shadi and Clayton are going to do offensively, which is an even bigger focus on the run, that's going to help Steele. Clayton is very fired up, and so is Connor about what Terrence can do. At right tackle, or where could he find himself, was the follow-up question. Stephen Jones said, yes, at right tackle. So now we've kind of thought about, like, all right, do you post June 1? Do you open up some space there via the salary cap? If you end up drafting one of these left tackles, do you look at moving their position or keeping them at left tackle and then saying, okay, Guyton, you can compete on the right side? But at least right now, Cowboys' plan moving forward is still Terrence Steele as your right tackle, and maybe he's on to something. I did not think Mike Solari helped Terrence Steele. I thought he was a better player under the coaching and guidance of Joe Philbin. Maybe he's right, and Clayton Adams can get him back to the run-blocking form that really was dominant for at least half of the season with Zach Martin a few years ago.
Yeah, no, and just generally, regardless of scheme, I just feel like a running play with Steele is a much better idea. You know, the pressure that he gets, high-quality rushers just ghost him. You know, he just does not have the quickness to get out wide on some of those guys, and the power as well is an issue.
Yeah.
So I think just in general, Brian, am I wrong?
No, and I think, I think when you followed up and said the power, that's the biggest issue with him. You know, these edges, it used to be like right defensive edges, that was your pass rush guy rushing against that left side. Now these teams have put some of their best players over against the right tackle. Mm-hmm. So, these right tackles have to be up to snuff on how to pass block over there. But the thing with Steele is, you can watch his tape and people just take him back to the quarterback. But the run blocking stuff, he has a really good fit and feel for how to work with the guard, how to kind of work himself inside, push the guard up second level, to get on the outside, the pin and pull stuff. I could see where Adams would like him they get a crack on the edge and a pull by the tackle with that pin and pull stuff I was just talking about. I could see how they like Steele to potentially do that.
Now, we've got the Combine going down. Thursday we start drills. Shan and RJ and Bobby, they're flying out. They're going to be there starting Wednesday. So this is incredible. For the first time in 105 Through the Fan history, we're going to have the Scouting Combine covered. We got Rangers Spring Training covered. That's what we do on your home, the Cowboys, home of the Rangers. So Thursday, you're going to get D-line and linebackers, Brian Broaddus.
Mm-hmm.
Friday, we get DBs and tight ends. Saturday, quarterbacks, receivers, and running backs. Cowboys, Stephen Jones also saying they're in the market to possibly draft a quarterback, which likely means they're moving on from Trey Lance. Maybe they're also moving on from Cooper Rush. Could they be looking at one of the Kyle McCords? I know Tyler Shug's been getting a lot of momentum. I don't get why, but hey, there's some other quarterbacks down the line there that they might be interested in on day 3 of the draft. Offensive line then rounds it out on Sunday. We found out, speaking of quarterbacks, though, Shador won't work out for teams at the Combine. So he's not going to do the drills. I'm sure he'll interview with teams, and he's scheduled to arrive on Tuesday.
Yeah.
He will not be doing the drills. So Caleb Williams did not do this last year. Neither did Jaden Daniels. They went on to really have pretty good seasons. Drake May also, I forgot, did not work out last year. All three, you'd say probably the three, along with Bo Nix, incredible rookie season. So, Brian, I mean, it's not the first time we've seen this, but I would love to see Shador be able to work out.
No, and he's the whole thing is about familiarity, and they've got draftable receivers at Colorado, and they could go back, they could set it up how they want to. Pat Shurmur, the offensive coordinator for the Buffs, former NFL head coach, offensive coordinator in the league, he can set up the drills. He knows what to do and what the pro teams want to see. So this doesn't surprise me. What we're about to have happen, though, are other positions not work out.
Exactly.
And Ashton Genty is not going to work out.
Yep.
Now, Will Johnson, corner from Michigan, there's talk about him not running at all because there's questions about his speed. So he might not ever run a 40-yard dash for anybody. And so there's, I get it. You want to throw to your own receivers. You want to control the practice and all those things. Great. But when we're starting to get guys that just, for positions that we're trying to evaluate that are speed dependent, when you talk about wide receivers and say corners not or safeties not running, now we're getting some issues. If they don't run at all, I would have a hard time drafting Will Johnson, corner Michigan, and not knowing his 40-yard dash time. I really would.
Because you're obviously hiding something, and it means you're not confident you're going to run a good time.
I don't think so, I don't think so.
Yeah, with a lot of other positions, I'd be okay with just going with the tape, but, I mean, that's terrifying.
Well, I understand what Travis Hunter's doing. He's basically telling people, like, listen, I won the Heisman Trophy. I've got tape. You can watch that. You want to interview me, see what kind of character I am, fine, all that. But if I don't have to,
you can tell I'm an electric athlete, though.
Oh no, absolutely. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. But there's some Will Johnson, that corner from Michigan, started off on a lot of people's board as a top 3 player, and now he's floating somewhere between 18 and 25 on where he's going to get picked. And the questions are now even more about how well does he really run. I know this is something that we've talked about on the draft show. I know Vach Lombardi and I on We're Doing All Right podcast have talked about it. Love of the Star, we've talked about it. That there's a group of scouts out there that are like, now the media scouts are catching up with the real scouts on how well this guy really runs.
I think the Cowboys drafting a quarterback thing is even more interesting, though. Because sure, it could mean goodbye to Trey Lance. I think Cooper Rush has just proven he can win, especially if you're going to run the ball even more. Like, his metrics and his analytics say one of the worst, but whenever he's getting in there for an extended stretch, you're like, wow, Cooper Rush kind of gave us a chance, right? And if that happens in the middle of next year and you have to go to an unproven guy or somebody maybe even worse than Trey Lance for the month of October or November, you're probably going to flush your season. I think Cooper Rush give you a chance to go 3-1 or 4-1 or whatever it might be. So that one right there is big, but at the same time, Dak's at an age now where I think you're looking at day 3 and saying, hey, we'll take this. We want to keep Cooper Rush, but we have to try our hand at getting lucky on a day 3 pick at this position here.
Well, they got multiple 5s.
Yep,
yeah,
3 5s.
And that's where, that's where this thing is probably going to fall.
Siobhan Ravel, the corner from East Carolina, who was considered also maybe the best corner in the draft, went ahead and suffered a torn ACL last October. Dr. Daniel Cooper said in a letter to NFL teams, when he reports to an NFL team after the 2025 draft, he will be cleared for all strength and conditioning activities and individual running and cutting drills as a DB. He will not be cleared for participation with the team until training camp. This is routine for the protocol after ACL reconstruction in football, but overall, really good news for Siobhan Ravel Jr. I know we're big fans of him. I personally like him a little bit more than Will Johnson, but some might look and say, like, hey, he's a little bit more stiff. Johnson's a little bit more fluid with the hips, but I think Ravel runs better than
opposite.
Will Johnson.
I think it's opposite, to be honest with you, Wolchuk. I think Ravel is the one that's got a little bit more fluidity to him than what Johnson has. Yeah, I think because of the length of Will Johnson, being 6'2", 202 pounds, I think it takes him. He could be a little leggy, and I think Ravel is a little bit more of a. When you start to talk about a guy that can move, the stickiness that he plays with, I really like this kid a lot, and I kind of feel it's unfortunate that he had to deal with that knee injury, but if Dr. Cooper's fixed him up, man, I would say I'm pretty excited about that.
Yeah, if Al Harris were still here, I think he'd love Siobhan Ravel Jr. I mean, he seems like kind of one of those dudes the Cowboys have been taking in recent years. I don't know. Like, do they view that a little bit differently now with the new coaching staff?
He might be there at 44 if people are not really comfortable with that knee,
Matthew Stafford has been given permission to talk to other teams about a trade. The Highland Park product was told over the weekend by the Rams. Now, this is good for the Rams. They're kind of able to gauge the interest there, according to Rappaport. Still hopes Stafford could return for the 2025 season in L.A. He's got 2 seasons left, 4-year extension he signed with the Rams back in 2022, but he's actually looking for a pay raise to whatever team he ends up going to, and a few have already expressed interest. The Steelers, the Giants are among teams inside the division, the Browns, and the Raiders as well, according to Albert Breer.
He's under contract for like $25 million, and apparently he wants 50 to 55. So the Rams are giving him permission to go out and find if a team wants to not only give them draft compensation for him, but also willing to do that contract. And if they are, then I think that they'd move on to trying to do something. But a lot of teams, based on what I'm seeing, feel like they're just doing that to see what the value is, and they're not really going to let him go.
Yeah, I think it'd be surprising to me, unless they have a plan in place already and they're ready to pivot. And the Rams have done an excellent job of rebuilding through the draft on their defense. But is there a quarterback they like? Is it Jackson Dart from Ole Miss? Like, what would be their backup option? Because that's a team that's ready to compete right now. Stafford just played brilliantly for you in 2 playoff games. Heck, he almost came back and gave you a chance to win against the Eagles in the snow. So,
hot shot.
It's surprising. It's surprising to me that they'd be willing to get rid of Matthew Stafford. But to your point, maybe one of these teams says, yeah, we agree with the Rams. We're not going to pay you $50 million. You got to make your $27 million, and then he just stays in L.A. The Raiders have the most cap space to work with among those teams right now. They appear to possibly be the favorites that would be willing to pony up that money, but we'll see what ends up happening moving forward with Matthew Stafford. That's definitely a big domino that could lead to other moves.
Second baseman got handcuffed. He was so jammed, he just said, "Oh, hell with it," and fell down on his butt. Still managed to snag the ball off his inner thigh and make the play to first.
Rangers still up 9-0 in the bottom of the 4th as they're playing the White Sox across town here as we're hanging out in Surprise, Arizona. GBag Nation covering spring training. We got a fun Joe Barlow interview for you a little bit later on. Former Cowboys safety Keanu Neal, 29 years old. He's retiring from the NFL after 8 seasons. Played with the Cowboys, Falcons, Bucks, Steelers. All the lessons learned, he wrote on Instagram. The game has helped mold me into who I am today. So congratulations on quite the career for Keanu Neal.
Yeah, it was going well in Atlanta there for a couple of years, wasn't it?
Yeah,
then he kind
Pro
of
Bowl
battled
guy.
injuries, and maybe he was a little, past his prime already by the time the Cowboys got him. But first-round pick, I think. Bama? Yeah, Keanu Neal, good player.
So we've got another linebacker that could be available as the Panthers are moving on from Shaq Thompson. 10
Saw
years.
that.
I can't believe 10 years. Shaq Thompson's already been in the league, so he's going to enter free agency. Could be another option if you want to go linebacker. I'm not sure the price that he's going to command. Former 25th overall pick in 2015 out of Washington. Was still a pretty darn productive player there for Carolina, so he's going to be entering his 11th season. I don't know. Does that end up being a cost-effective move? He's going to be 31 years old. He's going to test the market, and we'll see. Could that end up being at linebacker? Brian and I, we've talked about it. Weak linebacker class in the draft. I think that's an area you definitely need to try and address to add depth, if not another starter or two in free agency. So maybe Shaq Thompson's another name to throw into the conversation.
Yeah, the linebackers clearly, we've talked about their if you're going to do something, even if they add, they're probably going to bottom fish that group too. We're starting to see, more linebackers, but it's linebackers that are a little bit more undersized, like Jack Kaiser from Notre Dame. Guys that are 227 pounds, and there's a couple of guys in here though that are pretty good size. With Stutzman, from Oklahoma, has got some size to him, and then Kobe King from Penn State. Another guy, kind of throwback linebackers, but we're starting to see them. They're not guys that are up in the top, say, day 2 guys, but maybe more day 3 guys.
Another safety available too. You got something on the linebackers?
No, just a lot of them. A lot of former greats. Eric Kendricks is one of them. And how do you project a salary on a guy like Shaq Thompson? I don't even know. But there are options. If you believe in your pro scouting staff, I think the Cowboys have a really good track record of finding guys that can play that might be a little bit long in the tooth and get them at a great value. So I think this is a very relevant name for the Cowboys, depending on what that film looks like.
Another safety available too, Juan Thornhill was with Kansas City, won Super Bowls there, then moved to the Browns. They're releasing him. That's going to free up $7 million. He had 1 year, $7 million left on his deal, so that's going to free up some cap space for Cleveland. Juan Thornhill could be another safety if you want to add to that position. Cowboys did it a few years ago with Malik Hooker. They've got a starter for the last 3 years, but I do think that is a position that you could go and improve on via free agency. And in one of the weirdest hirings, Jags hiring former Bears OC Shane Waldron as their passing game coordinator. That's a surefire way to not allow Trevor Lawrence to improve.
They should trade for Jackson Smith and Jigba.
Oh, he loves him.
Set
Big
that
fan.
thing off right
Big
there.
fan of Shane Waldron. There's your NFL News of the Day.